So, as the world continues to disconnect further and further from reality, in my opinion, the one place that we should always be able to count on for truth and clarity is church. Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. I do appreciate you clicking on the video to watch it. And since you are here, I would love it if you would help me to grow this channel and hit that subscribe button now. And also make sure that your notifications are turned on so that you never miss an upload. And of course, to those of you that are returning, you know that I truly appreciate you supporting my channel, engaging in the conversation. And I would love it if you would make sure that you are subscribed as well. So today's topic might be a little bit of a touchy one, but then again, when do I ever talk about things that are not touchy? But let's get into it because I would love to hear all of your thoughts on this. So it is no secret that we are living in a society led by people who are bound and determined to make sure that we completely abandon truth and have us live by this idea that we all get to make up our own rules and we get to make up our own truths. And while it is packaged in these nice, pretty, fluffy ideas like empowerment and diversity and inclusivity, this is something that is actually meant to plunge us into total chaos where up is down and down is up and right is wrong and wrong is right and good is bad and bad is good and dogs are cats and cats are humans and humans are whatever we decide to be in that moment. Once we are all so confused that we can't even help ourselves anymore because we've spent all of our time and energy trying to make up our own identities and trying to make up our own definitions of things and then forcing other people to go along with it, that we end up completely incapable of doing anything productive or satisfying with our time, our talents, our skills, or our energy. And all we end up being able to do is just sit back from total exhaustion and do what the people who push these ideas on us in the first place want us to do, which is to beg the government to swoop in and save us. And you may or may not have noticed, but one of the greatest drivers of this delusion and chaos today is, of course, gender ideology, because this is something that is going to unravel our very foundation as a human being. Teaching kids that they can pick their gender, or diagnosing teens and young adults with a condition that says they were born in the wrong body every single time they come up with a mental health struggle. Nothing productive is going to come from that being our fundamental belief system as a society. And as we've seen, these ideas have infiltrated literally everything from business to education to athletics to fashion to entertainment and even our medical, psychological, and legal systems. Not because it's true, but because, again, we have people in charge who are determined to cripple us from the inside out and turn the next generations, in particular, into permanent medical patients with no connection to reality, who will need government assistance just to survive, who have no power at all, while those at the top have all the power, and we're too crippled to stand up for ourselves. So with all of these institutions that are sharing these false ideas and trying to confuse us and confuse our kids and cripple our families and get into our homes and make life just incredibly difficult all around, the place that we should be able to count on for truth and stability is our church. Because if you are somebody that you are a Christian and you understand the nature of God, you know that God is not about confusion and chaos, but about truth, of clarity, and of peace. You also know that being a male or a female is not just something that you are assigned at birth, but it is a part of your eternal identity as a son or daughter of God. And that any worldview that says the opposite, that your identity essentially means nothing, or it can mean something different every single day, or it's something so insignificant that you can just throw it away completely, that goes directly against the things that we know to be true. And despite the public narrative that says that anybody that does not affirm the trending ideology of the day that says that men and women and boys and girls can pick whatever they want to be and that anything that goes against that is hateful and bigoted, that is not true. And we know that God teaches us to love, to be kind to others, no matter what, to love our friends and neighbors, to love ourselves, to love our families, and to treat each other with respect and charity, regardless of what any of us are struggling with, whether it be our gender, whether it be addiction. It doesn't matter what it is, because we are all struggling in some way and we all need to be uplifted. And I have noticed that that seems to be the opposite of what gender ideology teaches, which is that if you disagree with me, then we are meant to hate each other. Also, despite what the public narrative wants us to believe, you can and should stick with absolute truth, because truth is honestly what is compassionate, because truth has real definition and real meaning, and it gives people a purpose and a direction, and that makes you a loving and respectful person. Whereas all of these other ideologies, as we can see, do not have an end game. They don't have an end goal. There is no end goal with being transgender. There is no end goal to accepting whatever the world wants to normalize, because as we've seen, it's never enough. Once you accept one thing, it's just the next thing. They ask the next thing. They ask you to accept the next thing. And the limit is whatever the human mind and the human imagination and human fetishes or twisted ideas can come up with. The world wants us to believe that putting any kind of moral boundary on something and saying something is right or wrong is the oppressive thing, is what is holding people back, is what is keeping people from being who they're supposed to be. But unfortunately, with all of this craziness going on, too many churches are doing one of two things. They're either going the way of the world and going along with whatever the world normalizes, and also allowing the world to define for us what love and compassion are, and we're supposed to allow God to tell us what love and compassion is, but they're allowing the world to make those definitions for them, which is essentially, again, to accept whatever people want to normalize, whatever people want to do, and that we cannot get in the way, which essentially brings to the pulpit the idea that anything goes, that how we live our lives doesn't matter, that our sins don't matter, that repentance doesn't matter, and that the definition of God's love is just to allow us to do whatever we want, even if it means utterly destroying ourselves. The second thing that they're choosing to do is to not take a stand at all or provide any clarity on any of these issues, because they're afraid of the backlash, which, if you live in a congregation or attend a church like that, I would be very disappointed in the leaders of that church. Because as we know, the gospel is not dictated by the mob. It is not dictated by what is trending. It's based on what is true and right and good and what is truly loving and compassionate. So I am going to get into a church that has decided to provide more clarity on their policies regarding these cultural issues, but I am interested to hear from you. Do you attend church? But do you believe that the basic understanding in handling these very sensitive issues are, and do you feel that the guidance that you are receiving from your church leaders is sufficient, or do you wish that they would do more? It's a very important conversation to have, and I understand that everybody is going to have a different take on it. So of course, I am wondering, I want to hear from you what you think. Now, as I said, there is a church that has come out to clarify their policies on these issues. And I think that if anybody wants to take a page out of this book, perhaps bring these ideas to your church leaders. And this is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Had policies in the past. Because they have members all over the world, they are trying to provide more clarity so that there's more consistency in their congregations across the globe. So this is an article from Blaze Media. And interestingly, they do refer to transgender people as transvestites. So you can let me know what your thoughts are on using that word. My opinion is it is more of an accurate word, because the word transgender implies the idea that you are able to change your gender or transition your gender, which you are not able to do. No amount of surgery, medication, ideas in your brain are going to change the gender that you were born as. So transvestite to me seems like a more accurate word to use. But I know that that word might make people upset, but I am going to use it just because that is what they use in this article. So just to begin, it says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has firmed up its policies regarding the participation of social and medical transvestites. While the church has stressed the need for compassion for the reality-averse and gender dysphoric, LGBT activists have nevertheless expressed outrage over the church's apparent unwillingness to subordinate its beliefs to their current set. So I think that is the crux of the issue right there, that the activists are outraged because the church isn't willing to bend the knee to the mob, to bow down to their demands. What they're trying to do is do their best to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, including all members of the congregation, and to give representation to everybody involved, not just one community of people, which is the transgender community. Because if you notice, anytime we do cover the transgender rights, transgender issues, the only representation that we are allowed to have in the public conversation is regarding how the transgender community feels, and everybody else can pretty much pound sand. Our churches should not be completely bowing down to their demands. They should be doing their best, doing the best they can to make space to accommodate as many people as they can without compromising what it is that they know to be true, which is that there are men and women and that there are differences between the two. It says those who undergo sex changes or social transitions will, for instance, be barred from receiving or exercising the priesthood, receiving or using a temple recommend, and serving in some church callings. Because there are very gender specific things that are done in a lot of churches that if you allow a man dressed as a woman to participate in that thing or vice versa, then again, that is affirming the idea that there are no differences between men and women. And if you are within an organization that teaches that there are, then you can't expect them to conduct themselves in a way that goes against the thing that they believe. There is a guiding principles document that is provided to each congregation to outline things like what capacity each of these people can serve in. In this document, it says that under the new changes, transvestites are not allowed to attend overnight co-ed activities such as youth camps. Additionally, they are not called or assigned to 1, fulfill gender-specific roles, 2, serve as teachers, or 3, work with children or youth. As for restroom use, the guidance indicates that transvestites should use the facility corresponding with their biological sex, a single occupancy restroom, or their preferred bathroom under the condition that a trusted person makes sure nobody else is inside. And as expected, there is going to be backlash to this because anytime anybody today takes a position that is not 100% affirming of the gender that somebody wants to identify as and live as, whether it be man, woman, they, them, or whatever other pronoun that this person comes up with or species identity that someone comes up with, then it is, of course, just automatically determined to be bigoted. There is no consideration for the fact that maybe they're trying to be balanced in their approach or they're trying to consider other people's feelings in this issue. The only way to actually demonstrate that you love and care for these people is to 100% give them what they want all the time. In this article from the Associated Press, it says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has disheartened LGBTQ+ activists after issuing a slew of new policies this week that would significantly restrict the role of its transgender members. Again, these are not new policies. This is just clarifying some of the older ones and clarifying probably a lot of the questions that church leaders have had in their own congregations across the country and across the world, wondering how the heck do we handle these things because they have hundreds of people that they are trying to oversee and trying to create as much of a comfortable environment for their members as possible. Includes, again, no matter what the struggle is, whatever you are struggling with, you belong in church to create and maintain that relationship with God. And they're doing their best, understanding that this has become a bigger issue and that this is something that has to be handled with sensitivity and compassion for everyone. And it goes on to say the guidelines were released Monday as part of updates to the general handbook of the denomination known widely as the Mormon Church. Previously, the interpretation of the church's policies on this matter were left open to local congregations, their bishops, and lay leaders. These new guidelines clarify most of the gray areas. Church spokesperson Doug Anderson pointed to a statement released by the denomination which says that updated guidelines were issued to help local leaders minister more effectively to individuals who identify as transgender and their families. States that the changes, in addition, clarifying guidance on baptism, confirmation, priesthood, and temple ordinances, aims to ensure consistency in policies while allowing local leaders flexibility to minister based on each person's needs. You have somebody included in this article that has been a member in the past offering their perspective on it. So this person is Lori Lee Hall, a transgender woman who was excommunicated in 2017 after she transitioned, said the new guidelines make it challenging for people like her to keep the faith. The door seems shut and bolted, she said Friday. Hall, who lives near Louisville, Kentucky, said she was participating in a local Mormon church that has been welcoming and inclusive by even allowing her to participate in classes and activities with women. While I've had some separation from the church in terms of my membership and beliefs, I've enjoyed at least a social connection with the women at church, Hall said. Now, none of that is going to be possible. I'd attend church in a dress, shoes, and makeup, and be required to sit with a bunch of men wearing suits. It would put a target on me as someone who is severely off script. And I understand that updates like this and clarity like this is going to be very difficult for people that are dealing with this particular issue. Nobody is ignoring that. Nobody is pretending that that isn't going to be a struggle. It is something that obviously we have to be very sensitive to. We have to be very compassionate about, but we also have to understand the other side of the conversation, because it's not just about the bathroom that you use. It is not just about dressing up as a woman and going into the women's class, or identifying as a woman and being allowed to work with teenage girls. It is about what those things confirm, because I feel this way every time I see a man dressed up as a woman going into a woman's locker room at a gym, or a boy being allowed to run on a girls' sports team. It's not just as simple as allowing the act to happen. It's what those actions affirm. And that affirms that there is no difference between men and women, that we can be whatever we want, that we can pick and choose. And that directly contradicts the ideology of the church. We have two competing ideologies that teach and believe two separate things, because gender ideology, or trying to pick your gender, is not the end game. It is not going to be the last new thing that the world comes up with and says that this is okay, this is right, this is moral, and it is compassion for us to accept it. So if we can't draw the line now and say that reality, truth, and facts matter, that the way that we were created matters, and we can't hold to our beliefs in this particular situation in the face of this challenge, then how are we going to do it with anything else? It is important to recognize that these things are coming from a place of love for everybody, that we are all sons and daughters of God, that we are all trying to do the best that we can, and we are all trying to manage a very, very chaotic world. But that lines do have to be drawn in the sand, because as I just said, if you don't draw a line now, when are you going to draw that line? Because the world has no stopping point to how far that it will push us over the edge. In this section of the handbook, it says individuals who identify as transgender. Gender is an essential characteristic in Heavenly Father's plan of happiness. See Genesis 1:27. The intended meaning of gender in the family, a proclamation to the world, is biological sex at birth. Some people feel their inner sense of gender does not align with their biological sex at birth. The church does not take a position on the causes of these feelings. Some who experience these feelings identify as transgender. These individuals often face complex challenges. They and their family and friends should be treated with sensitivity, kindness, and compassion, and Christ-like love. All are children of God and have divine worth. And one of the last issues, of course, that we all have to contend with regularly is the issue of, do we use someone's preferred pronouns or the pronouns that align with their biological sex? How do we refer to these people? How do we handle these situations? And I did see a guiding principles document that is being distributed to their local leaders, saying that we are not going to tell you what to do as far as pronouns and how you refer to people. We are not going to tell members of the church that they have to use these pronouns, or that they have to use the thing that aligns with their biological sex. I believe that is going to be on an individual basis, on a relationship basis, and it is just going to have to be managed on both sides with understanding where each other is coming from, which I know is something that is increasingly difficult for us to do in the world that we live in. We all have to have what we want all the time, but at the same time, there is fundamental truths that cannot be ignored. I personally may choose not to use someone's preferred pronouns because it does not align with reality, but I am not going to judge someone that I go to church with who chooses to use the pronouns that someone prefers. Anyway, I am going to leave that one there. It is something that I wanted to touch on because, again, I have seen so many things going on in churches that are just so confusing to me because, again, of all places, churches need to be the place where we are adhering to truth because, again, God is not dictated by the mob. He is not dictated by what is trending. He is not led by what is popular in the world or whatever new ideology takes hold and spreads like wildfire. At the same time, regardless of the things that we grab onto, we always have a path back to him, and we should be trying to have that relationship with him to have that understanding and that clarity. I would love to hear all of your thoughts on this in the comments below. This is not a video about whether or not you agree with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or your feelings on their religion in general. I am trying to just put out there that I think churches in general just need to be more clear about what they're doing with their congregations. And if you would like to see more clarity in your congregation with your church leader, you've been given a few ideas about what that clarity could look like. Please be sure to hit that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed and that your notifications are turned on. Please tune into my live streams that are every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. Keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one.